Hi BookTube, it's Peg. I'm back at the history shelf. I'm here to show you some more books because that's what I do. That's what I love to do. As well as read books, I like to buy books. And apparently I buy a lot, as you can see. But I have even more than that. Um, anyway, I hope you guys are doing well today. Thought I'd do another part two of a book haul. I did one yesterday that I bought from hamiltonbook.com. This is from bookoutlet.com. In addition to one that I just bought used and new off of Amazon. So I thought I'd throw it into this batch just to show you. But basically, I have about 6 or 7 history / nonfiction, and then I have 5 fiction. So, sorry, these animals are just roaming around here and distracting me. Are your animals distracting you guys at all? I'm curious at this lockdown if they're, after a month or so of being quarantined, do you find that you're all getting on each other's nerves a little bit? Anyway, I get the feeling sometimes the dogs are like, will you just leave? When are you going to work? You know? I understand. I understand that feeling. Okay, so I've made videos before of book hauls, and I'm trying to find a new title for the video without repeating the exact same title, just for search functionality. Maybe I should put a date on the title, just to differentiate it, because I do have new books and I like to show you new books. So if you have any suggestions on what I can title these videos, sometimes I title them more new books, New Book Tuesday, new book, history books. Maybe I should just put a date on them. Anyway, booktubers out there, if you have suggestions, please let me know as I cast around for a name for this video. Okay, so let's just dive in, shall we? We've got quite a few books here. Let's start with a book that I did not get off of bookoutlet.com, but is a recent addition to my library. I'm trying to remember who it was who commented on one of my videos. I think I was talking about how I joke around that I have a minor in evil dictators. I like to read about them. And someone said, have you read any books on Mussolini? And of course, I've read Mussolini as far as he's included in other studies. But I do not have a Mussolini biography. So I thought, you know what, that's a great suggestion, and I'm going to look into that. And this one looks like it was a definitive edition. If anyone else has any other suggestions, let me know. I think this is a UK edition. It's from Bloomsbury, and this is Mussolini by R.G.B. Bosworth. New edition. I think they just reissued it in a paperback. Might have a new foreword or introduction. Well, this was first published in 2002, but this edition was published in 2010 by Bloomsbury Academic. This is going to be a very thick read because the type is very, very small. You can see that. You can't even focus on it, but it is tiny. You have to really break out the reader glasses, maybe break out two times the magnification just to try to read this book. But I thought, you know what, I need to have a book on Mussolini. So if you guys are aware of another biography, I was searching online, and this one seemed to be the one that was most recent and maybe, most up to date with, access to archival materials and primary sources. But let me know what you know. Let me know what you know. If you know of a classic Mussolini biography, comment below. Okay, so now we're moving on to my stack of nonfiction. So again, I have six, and most are history. I'll show you the 2 that are just general nonfiction. So I picked this book up after I read a book when I was judging for the Booktube Prize, and it was The Ministry of Truth. It's a biography of Orwell's 1984. So this name came up somewhere in the musings of the author, and I thought I would check it out. Apparently this is a classic, because this is the 20th anniversary edition of Amusing Ourselves to Death. Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business by Neil Postman. It's a very unique cover. I think what I wanted to read about this is just how we're kind of how TV is like reshaping, or different modes of entertainment like that, electronic entertainment, have impacted our culture. And so let me just read this to you. More relevant than ever, the prophetic landmark work exploring the corrosive effects of electronic media on a democratic society. Television has habituated us to visual entertainment measured out in spoonfuls of time. But what happens when we come to expect the same things from our politics and public discourse? What happens to journalism, education, and religion when they too become forms of show business? 20 years ago, Neil Postman's lively polemic was the first book to consider the way that electronic media were reshaping our culture. Now, with TV joined by the internet, cell phones, cable, and DVDs, amusing ourselves to death carries even greater significance. And it's a compelling take on our addiction to entertainment. Slim little volume, but I thought it would be pretty thought-provoking. About 163 pages. Yep, so I don't have the price list for bookoutlet.com, but I think this was pretty affordable. I'm trying to figure out where to put. I'm just going to drop them on the floor. How about that? Oh, okay, so this also, I saw this on bookoutlet.com, and this, after I read that book on Orwell in 1984, I just went on an Orwell spree. And I love his work, and I also have two of his other collections of essays, and this is the great Christopher Hitchens, and this is Why Orwell Matters. A little slim volume, put out by Basic Books. And this is a book by him I have not read. I've read a couple of his others, but this came out in 2002. Oh, that's nice. He dedicated it to Robert Conquest. I love Robert Conquest. He's got a very important work on Soviet Union, communism. Highly recommend his work if you're interested in that topic. This is to Robert Conquest, premature anti-fascist, premature anti-Stalinist, poet and mentor, and founder of, quote, the United Front Against Bullshit, end quote. Couldn't have said it better myself. So in this book, Hitchens, he assesses the life, the achievements, and the myth of the great political writer and participant George Orwell. Hitchens is both admiring and aggressive, sympathetic yet critical, taking true measure of his subject as hero and problem. Answering both the detractors and the false claimants, Hitchens tears down the facade of sainthood erected by the hagiographers and rebuts the critics point by point. He examines Orwell and his perspectives on fascism, empire, feminism, and Englishness, as well as his outlook on America, a country and culture toward which he exhibited much ambivalence. Whether thinking about empires or dictators, race or class, nationalism or popular culture, Orwell's moral outlook remains indispensable in a world that has undergone vast changes in the 7 decades since his death. This book addresses not only why Orwell matters today, but how he will continue to matter in a future uncertain world. Indeed. Why Orwell matters. All right. Yeah, so this next book, this has been in my cart for a while, and I finally, I was going to buy it off Amazon. Price kept fluctuating, then it wasn't available, and then I noticed it was on bookoutlet.com, and I was so excited. I don't know how many of you have Netflix, but I highly recommend a limited series that they made called The Spy. Pretty sure it was called Spy. And it starred, of all people, in his first serious role, Sacha Baron Cohen. Um, and it was based on this man. It's a true story. And it was a fabulous series. And his acting was, wow, he can play serious roles. This is the guy who played Borat and all of these jackass kind of characters, you know. But wow, I really was impressed by his acting. And I hope to see more serious work by him. It was a very important historical series, and it was based on this man's life. This is called The Angel, the Egyptian spy who saved Israel. So let me read a little bit about who this person was. Uh, well, his name was Ashraf Marwan. Okay, but let me get in here. As the son-in-law of Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser and a close advisor to his successor, Anwar Sadat, Ashraf Marwan had access to the deepest secrets of the country's government. But Marwan had a secret of his own. He was a spy for the Mossad, Israel's renowned intelligence service. Under the Mossad code name, the Angel, Marwan turned Egypt into an open book and saved Israel from a devastating defeat by tipping off the Mossad in advance of the joint Egyptian-Syrian attack on Yom Kippur in 1973. Marwan eluded Egypt's ruthless secret police for decades. Then in 2007, his body was found in a bed of roses in the garden below his apartment building in London. Police suspected he had been thrown from his balcony on the fifth floor, but the case has remained unsolved until now. I don't think they're giving anything else away in the story. But basically, it is about his life and how he infiltrated the highest echelons of Egyptian and Syrian politics. And I wanted to know more about him because I watched that series and I was so intrigued by what this man sacrificed. You know, his family. I mean, he would be away for years at a time. His wife had babies, and he could only come back every now and a great then. He's deeply, deeply undercover. But he was a deeply religious Jew, and he of Egyptian descent, and he felt, you know, like this was his way to give back to Israel, the place that he called his homeland. So, very powerful stuff. So this is the real work, the book that I think that show really pulled a lot from, and this is by Yuri Bar-Joseph. Sorry, that's The Angel. Okay. Finally, I'm happy to finally get that. Here's another book, history book I've been meaning to get. It's a classic. And I think I had tried buying a used copy of this a long time ago, and it arrived and it was yellowed and the cover was bent and wrinkled, and I'm like, I need a new copy. So a book outlet had it, and this is The Great Hunger, Ireland, 1845 to 1849, by Cecil Woodham Smith. It's a period of time I want to know more about. You know, Martine and I have talked a little bit about just the general history of Ireland and just how much Ireland has had to suffer from other empires, such as the British Empire. Natural disaster like, you know, a famine, which, again, there are some books out there that claim that Britain had a hand in really engineering that. And, you know, the Great Hunger is what really pushed them to leave Ireland and to immigrate to America, large numbers of Irish folk. But this is supposed to be a classic. It's a Penguin edition, very nice, very clean. It is not yellowed, it is not beat up. I'll just read a quick synopsis. The Irish potato famine of the 1840s, perhaps the most appalling event of the Victorian era, killed over 1 million people and drove as many more to emigrate to America. It may not have been the result of deliberate government policy, yet British obtuseness, short-sightedness, and ignorance, and stubborn commitment to laissez-faire solutions largely caused the disaster and prevented any serious efforts to relieve suffering. The continuing impact on Anglo-Irish relations was incalculable. Incalculable. I was pulling a Michael Scott there for a minute. Incalculable. The immediate human cost almost inconceivable. In this vivid and disturbing book, Cecil Woodham Smith provides the definitive account. So I finally got The Great Hunger. Okay, so this next book I was a little on the fence about. I was like, do I really need this right now? Because I have so many books. Oh, this is like $6. But it's a very nice paperback edition. And sometimes I want to read about this guy, sometimes I don't. But you know what? Why not? This is a conspiracy so immense. The World of Joe McCarthy by David M. Oshinsky. This is with a novelist's eye for the dramatic and an insightful interpretation of human complexity. Acclaimed historian David Oshinsky strips away the layers of myth to show the true Joseph McCarthy. He reveals the senator from his humble beginnings as a hardworking Irish farmer's son in Wisconsin to his glory days as the architect of America's Cold War crusade against domestic subversion. The man whose advice, if heeded, some believe might have halted the spread of communism in Southeast Asia and beyond. A conspiracy so immense reveals the internal and external forces that launched McCarthy on this political career, carried him to national prominence, and finally triggered his decline and fall. More than portraying the life of an intensely, even pathologically ambitious man, however, this book is a fascinating portrait of America in the grip of Cold War, fear, anger, suspicion, and betrayal. So, I thought I'd try it. It was kind of, it's a very, very nice, let me do the Steve flap. There we go. Lots of pictures, lots of stuff. It kind of fills in my Cold War library. I feel like I should have. I don't really have any type of study on this McCarthy period or McCarthyism or whatever. If any of you guys have any alternate suggestions for about this period, let me know. But I thought I'd pick this up. Very nice condition. Okay, last history book I picked up, because again it fed into my interest in going all things Orwell after I read the Ministry of Truth. I got this one, and I had known it was out. I hadn't pulled the trigger on it, but now I have. This is Churchill and Orwell, The Fight for Freedom by Thomas E. Ricks, and I know his work. He wrote Fiasco and the Generals, and I believe I have the Generals. I don't have Fiasco. But General Thomas Ricks, he's retired. Wait, no. Why do I always think he's a general? This guy. I always equate his name with being a military man. He's not a military man. Okay. Apologies to the military out there, But, no, he's a journalist. He's written for Foreign Policy magazine. He's covered the U.S. military for the Washington Post for like 10 years or so. Worked on the Wall Street Journal. But then he became the author of like 6 books, including The Generals, Fiasco, which was a bestseller, and Making the Corps. Anyway, I don't know why maybe because he covers the military so in depth, sometimes I think he's like a retired general. So this takes like a dual biography in a sense. Let's see. I don't know. I mean, this is a very long description, but essentially, he parallels them, right? It's a dual biography of Winston Churchill and George Orwell, whose vision and actions helped to preserve democracy from the threats of authoritarianism from the left and right alike. He kind of just, goes into how both men were very keen to what was happening around them in the world, especially when it came to totalitarianism. warning about it, warning about communism. Um, so I think this is going to be an interesting dual biography. One's on a politician, one's on a writer, and how they both fought for freedom, but just in their different ways. So, um, and it covers a lot of cool stuff on Orwell, which I wanted after I read The Ministry of Truth, which was great. I highly recommend that book. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into the next round in the Book 2 prize. It didn't make it to the quarterfinals. It was good. Anyway, I got Churchill and Orwell, The Fight for Freedom. Okay, so now I got some fiction, just because, change things up a bit. I'll save one of these for last. And luckily, Martine's not around for me to show, because we'd never hear the end of it. Okay, so this one I was very excited to see. It was on bookoutlet.com. This author, prior to my reading of a book I reviewed for the historical novels review, I'd never heard of this guy. But he has a new book out, and it's called Lord of All the Dead, a nonfiction novel. And it was a take on his family, a family member who fought on Franco's side in the Spanish Civil War. And then I started getting intrigued by the Spanish Civil War, which is an area of my history shelves and just my own study that I have not really delved into. I mean, I know the sides, I know which sides were which, but and he wrote such a lyrical book, and I really enjoyed Lord of All the Dead. So, and then I realized, so this guy, reading that book, he talks about his other novels, and one of them is this, The Imposter, a true story by Javier Cercas. It's a really cool cover, as you can see. This is put out by Knopf. And it sounds so much like The Lord of All the Dead, but it's a novel. Who is Enrique Marco? For decades, he gave hundreds of speeches and interviews about being a veteran of the Spanish Civil War, a crusader for justice, and a Holocaust survivor. But a true story. I thought this was a novel. Soldiers of Salamis is the other book that I want to read by him. That one is fiction, so maybe this is... Oh, this should have been... maybe this should have been in my nonfiction stack. Let's see. But in May 2005, at the heights of his renown, Marco was exposed as a fraud. He was never in a Nazi concentration camp, and perhaps the rest of his past was fabricated too. A combination of his delusions of grandeur and his compulsive lying. The story was reported around the world, transforming him from a hero to villain in the blink of an eye. Now, more than a decade later, in a hypnotic narrative... Okay, this is the thing with Javier Cercas. See, I thought this was fiction because it partly is. It's what he did in Lord of All the Dead. In a hypnotic narrative that combines fiction and nonfiction, detective story and war story, biography and autobiography, Javier Cercas sets out to unravel Marco's enigma. With both profound compassion and lacerating honesty, Cercas takes the reader on a journey not only into one man's gigantic lie, but also through his exploration of our infinite capacity for self-deception, our opposing needs for fantasy and reality, our appetite for affection, into the deepest, most flawed parts of our humanity. And here's Javier. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I'm kind of intrigued by this writer now since I read Lord of All the Dead. He does do an interesting blend of fiction and nonfiction, because you're always wondering what's true and what's not. But I picked this up for, I don't know, $7. Then you can't really find it anywhere else. I think on Amazon it was not even available new. Okay, then I picked up a classic, which I was having a discussion with Andrew B. in the comments on my last video about books that have remainder marks, and he thinks it's a travesty. And I don't disagree, but sometimes I just can't afford new books all the time or new hardcovers or things like that. But this one has a remainder mark that's just really egregious. So I think, I'm probably going to dip in and read this, but for for something for my library, I'll save money and I'll get a nice hardcover edition, whether Modern Library, Everyman's Library, whatever. But I want to give this book another shot after watching Leaf by Leaf's couple of videos he did, Chris at Leaf by Leaf, which is a great channel. Check it out. He covered Don Quixote, and I started reading a little bit when I was younger, like way too young, and it was over my head. I want to give this a chance again, and this is the most recent new translation by Edith Grossman, with an introduction by Harold Bloom, and I like Harold Bloom. So this is a big chunky chunkster book here. See, got a nice flap to it. It falls open easily because it's so big. You just see, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, yeah, that's the egregious mark. It doesn't have to be like that, folks. Why can't you just put a dot? And then that thing. I'm sorry. That really made me mad. It's like that line compared to here. There's a dot. Why we gotta do this? Anyway, so I've just been reading lately about how funny this book is supposed to be, and I want to give it a try. So, add this to my classics stack. Oh yeah, so this fiction book, last two fiction books, also tie into just the not Brave New World, but that's kind of a nod to this next book, but the Orwell kick I'm on, right? So I discovered this book and thought I'd check it out. This is a fiction, but it's called The Last Man in Europe by Dennis Glover. It's the little volume. So the setting is April 1947. In a rundown farmhouse on a remote Scottish island, George Orwell begins his last and greatest work, 1984. 43 years old and suffering from the tuberculosis that within 3 winters will take his life, Orwell comes to see the book as his legacy, the culmination of a career spent fighting to preserve the freedoms that the wars and upheavals of the 20th century have threatened. Completing the book is an urgent challenge, a race against death. In this highly compelling, deeply researched novel, Dennis Glover explores the creation of Orwell's classic work, which for millions of readers worldwide defined the 20th century and is now again proving its unnerving relevance. Simultaneously a captivating drama, a unique literary excavation, and an unflinching portrait of a writer, The Last Man in Europe will change the way we understand both our enduringly Orwellian times and 1984, the book. This got a ton of blurbs. This was put out by the Overlook Press. Yeah, so I thought I'd check this out, you guys. Looks kind of neato. Neat at like 245 pages. So pick that up. And then, of course, reading about Orwell, I read about his compatriots and Huxley. Now, I think I had tried to read Brave New World again when I was in high school. I don't remember it. So I thought, well, let me look into Huxley, right? They didn't have Brave New World on bookoutlet.com, but they did have this one for very cheap. And this was his other book. This is Aldous Huxley's The Island, a novel. And this is the PS edition, which has the insights, interviews, and more. I have like a whole section about Huxley. A Life of the Mind. So this is, I guess, his final novel. In this, it says here, it's his provocative counterpoint to his classic Brave New World. So in his final novel, which he considered his most important, Aldous Huxley transports us to the remote Pacific island of Pala, where an ideal society has flourished for 120 years. Inevitably, this island of bliss attracts the envy and enmity of the surrounding world. A conspiracy is underway to take over Pala, and events are set in motion when an agent of the conspirators, a newspaperman named Farrenby, is shipwrecked there. What Ferrenby doesn't expect is how his time with the people of Pala will revolutionize all his values and, to his amazement, give him hope. So that's the back of the book. Yeah, so I thought I would check this one out. Maybe I'll read his final book first. Then I'll move around to Brave New World. Let me know if you guys have read this and what you think. I'm intrigued. Boom. Okay, so that was my stack. Now I've got to find room on the shelves. It's a never-ending dilemma. No, I forgot. Nope, I got one more. Martine's not around. That's right. Oh yes, it's Brad Thor time. Been talking about him, so you know, he's a cool guy. I've seen interviews with him. He's a cool guy. He's got a new book coming out in June, and I've been meaning to keep moving through his series. He's written like what, 20 of them, I think. This is like number 6 or 5. I've got a ways to go, but you know what? I read these. They're the mass market paperbacks, and I donate them. You know, they don't take up a lot of space on my shelves. The last couple of books I did get in hardcover, so I'm anxious to read them in hardcover because sometimes these narrow ones are kind of crappy as far as, I don't like these narrow, tall pages. You guys like narrow, tall pages? I don't. And then I have to break the spine because it's a really tight binding. But this is the First Commandment. He writes you're probably wondering, if you don't know who Brad Thor is, then he writes like espionage, spy, military thrillers based around this one character, Scott Harvath, who starts off as, I believe, a Secret Service agent, and then he just slowly like moves his way up the chain, and it gets, you know, he's got a lot of really cool stuff that happens, which is, and a lot of it's unbelievable, but you know what, it makes for a really fun read if you want to escape. And I do enjoy thrillers. I've read, you know, I've read a Tom Clancy. I've read a Tom Clancy. Used to like reading Clive Cussler. I think I'd like to try him again too, actually. I've been getting into spy stuff lately too. I'm trying to think of the other book that I had that was more spy related. Ignatius, I think, is the writer. Is it Ignatius? I can't remember, but anyway, guys, I like spies and thrillers, and this is good stuff right here. Brad Thor, The First Commandment. Again, 5th or 6th in the series here. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 6th. And yeah, he's got a lot. He's got a lot of books. So anyway, it's about, what's the page count here? Oh, he's got a acknowledgement. Okay. It's almost 500 pages, if you can believe it. Doesn't look like it is. It's probably because the type is so spaced out, and the alleys are so wide on the pages. They don't need to be. But anyway, so I picked this up for like $6, new on Amazon. I told you it was coming. Yeah, Martine is not around, so I don't have to hear the boos, as it were. You know, he's a cool guy. Anywho, I think we'll end there, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of these books. I will continue to make videos. Thank you for all of your likes and subscribers, new subscribers. Thank you. Welcome. And yeah, if you have any questions below for me, and let me know. I reply to everybody. So I hope you're having a great day out there, and have a great night, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.